Well, after several leaders from the Bharatiya Janata Party leveled attacks on Rahul Gandhi that he wanted to destabilize the Indian economy, now the attack had come in from Vice President of India, Jagdeep Dhankhar. In a wheel dig at the leader of opposition Rahul Gandhi, when he stated that a person holding a constitutional position is attempting to destroy the India's economy. Remember, this came after Rahul Gandhi raised concerns about the integrity of India's stock market following the latest Hindenburg report. Remember, Rahul Gandhi questioned that why India's market regulators chief Madhavi Puri Bhuj had not resigned in light of the explosive revelations. It was Vice President Jagdeep Dhankhar who was addressing the students at the National Law University, and he stated that he was extremely worried about the narrative which, according to him, aimed at destroying the country's economy. He also stated that when a person sitting on a constitutional position just last week declared in a well-published media campaign that the Supreme Court should take a suo motu invoke jurisdiction to give wings to a narrative aimed at destroying our economy.
All right, Amitabh Tiwari, what is your view on the remarks that have been made by the Vice President? He says, and I'm quoting, part of that speech that he gave, he says this is a narrative that is aimed at destroying the country's economy.
See, essentially, both the Vice President and the Leader of Opposition occupy constitutional posts. So we have a Vice President now who is fairly vocal about his political statements, and he keeps on making these statements. However, if you see the larger picture here he's talking about the Hindenburg second report, after which Rahul Gandhi made some statements and he put out a video. See, being the LOP now, Rahul Gandhi, of course, needs to realize that he occupies a constitutional post and it's a very delicate position. The role of the opposition is not only to oppose but also acknowledge the good work done by the government and provide an alternate vision to the country. So in such matters, what happens is that in the eagerness to pin down his opposition, which is the BJP, he would have come out with that video and made those statements that the Supreme Court should take suo motu notice of this. However, the opposition parties themselves had gone to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court had instituted an SIT, and we've seen that in 22 or 23 of the charges, the Supreme Court has given a clean sheet to the Adani Group in this matter. So it's just a way of saying things. So I think the opposition or the Rahul Gandhi or the Congress or the India bloc now needs to adopt the policy similar to when they adopt that when issues of national importance like defense, etc. So here is an issue of national importance because India is now the 5th largest market cap economy in the world, and it has not become the 5th largest just by having a weak regulator or policies. And we also have to see when such a group is raising a conflict of interest allegation, then there cannot be a bigger conflict of interest than themselves when they have taken short positions on the group and then release the report. So it's a delicate matter. It's an issue of national importance, our stature in the world. And on these issues, the LOP has just to be a bit cautious. He might just have said the same thing in a very different manner. If he would have said that India has a very robust regulator and is the 5th largest economy by market cap. However, these allegations could also be seen in the light of that, and there could be some inquiry by the government. Then it's a positive statement and it's not a negative statement. So this is how I think the opposition will need to approach this.
Right, absolutely. Jayanand Dehadrai, do you also take that position? Now, the point that has been made is that the opposition, in an eagerness perhaps, to be able to capitalize on any situation, isn't able to step back a bit perhaps and think how it could affect the sentiment of the market, how it could essentially affect our position as the 5th largest economy.
Nupur, thank you for asking me that question, and thank you for having me on your show. I want to just make a few points, and I take your question. The way I look at it, from a purely legal perspective, this issue is crystal clear to me. You have the Vice President of India, who also, in his capacity as Vice President, is the Speaker of the Chairman of the Rajya Sabha. Now he's addressing some law students. What do you expect him to say? I disagree with the gentleman who spoke before me. I don't think it was a political statement by Vice President Jagdeep Dhankhar at all. I think he made a very important legal and constitutional point. He says, and I agree with him, that nobody in this country has any business to use the broad shoulders of the Supreme Court to try and score political brownie points. Now, I don't want to wade into the political controversy here, but I can tell you this for sure, that to try and use the Supreme Court to further your own personal political agenda, because you've not been able to get any traction in the media or among the people in trying to spin a narrative that India's markets are in danger, or that India's market regulator is compromised in some manner. That narrative isn't working. So now the idea is, I heard that statement by Mr. Rahul Gandhi. I think it's a very irresponsible statement that as leader of the opposition, he shouldn't have made that statement. And he tried to say that, the markets are going to suffer and that there's a major problem in SEBI. And I'm very proud to say that I predicted this. I said that absolutely no impact will befall the markets. And that is precisely what happened. We saw what happened on Monday. There was barely any impact on the Indian markets as a whole, and even on the Adani share, barely anything happened. So I think it's that old adage that we were taught as kids, that if you cry wolf once, you cry wolf twice, nobody takes you seriously. And I think the same fate has befallen now Hindenburg and also these opposition leaders who are basically trying to, further their own personal political agenda by using this issue. But they're doing it in a very dangerous way, because they're trying to besmirch the reputation of institutions that have, tried and tested institutions that have been around for decades. So from that perspective, I think, I don't think there's been much of a political impact at all.
Right. Amitabh Tiwari, coming back to you, Jay Anand makes a very, pertinent point over there. He says that the markets did not react. The country's top economists did not seem to see anything much with the report that came in the recent round of allegations against the SEBI chairperson. But the fact of the matter also is that the markets are driven by sentiment. So if they did not react, one should assume that this is something that has been a bit of a damp squib, really.
Yeah, so markets are a great leveler, correct, and they have clearly discounted this report. Markets also exhibit the wisdom of the crowd, and that's what I was pointing at, and that's what you also said, that in the eagerness to oppose everything which the government comes up with, or any news or any report against the government, the opposition should be cautious and take a step back and realize, first of all, read in detail what the report is. What is the credibility of the institution which has released the report? What happened last time when they had released the report? Correct, the markets did tank, but now the Adani Group stocks are at higher levels than they were at that point of time when the report was released, because the Supreme Court gave a clean chit. So in this eagerness, you have to take a step back and see the larger picture, because as you said, the markets clearly discounted the report because there was no meat in the report. It did not have anything against the Adani Group. That's number one. Number two, it seems that Hindenburg, which has had, you could say, a decent track record in the sense that they have managed to short shell companies and brought some of them into distress, probably frustrated by their not being able to repeat the same feat here, and also frustrated by the fact that the regulator has sent notices to the Hindenburg. I think that's why probably they have come up with this report, and it was clearly did not have much.
Absolutely. I could see Jay Anand raising his hand, wanting to talk about it. Please go ahead.
I think I agree with what Mr. Tiwari says. I think he makes a very astute observation. He's very right when he says that the markets have discounted it, and ultimately the markets are the final arbiter to determine whether there is something meritorious in these reports or not. But I want to make another very quick point, Nupur. look at the conduct of this gentleman, Mr. Rahul Gandhi, who's made this remark. He wants, as I said earlier, as I pointed out earlier, he wants the Supreme Court to take suo motu cognizance of this issue. I ask myself a very simple question. If he has any material, or if he has confidence in what he believes, why doesn't he go himself and file a petition before the Supreme Court? Is it because he knows somewhere in his heart that this another petition like this will fall flat? Does he know that the moment he enters the domain of the court, that he will, and perhaps he's calculated the risk of it being rejected by the court, will he lose political mileage outside the court on the streets? So these are questions that one has to ask, and nobody's against his politics. I mean, that's the political realm. They will raise issues, and as they must. But to try and drag in institutions, to try and plant a seed of doubt in the minds of the Indian people that, oh, you have the Supreme Court here who's not taking suo motu cognizance of an issue which they ought to have taken. Why doesn't he also point out in the same breath that the Supreme Court has already gone into this issue in great depth, had appointed an independent committee with the finest minds of on securities laws in India, including a former Supreme Court judge, to look at this issue threadbare, and they came back with the finding that nothing is amiss. So he should point that out in the same breath as well. So I have been saying this for some months now, and in the context of another issue, I don't want to go into it, but I personally believe that given perhaps the opposition's inability to strike any fatal blows to this government, they are clutching at straws now, perhaps looking for issues, any kind of issue that might stick. And I have no doubt in my mind that there is an attempt to destabilize Indian markets by using these foreign forces. And the consequence of that, as we all know, is that there will be a political fallout. That is pretty much the design here. And I think the kudos to the Indian investor, they can see right through it. And they seem to be in no mood to be played around with, is my sense.
And this is not the first time that we have seen comments like this one coming, targeting, the Indian markets and actually questioning the levels that they are at, essentially discarding the wisdom of the investor, so to say. Any final thoughts, Amitabh Tiwari, before we wrap up?
Well, essentially, the opposition has to play a constructive role. Now, Rahul Gandhi needs to realize that there is a difference between an opposition leader and a leader of opposition, because it's a constitutional post. So the same tactic or strategy which he uses in rallies cannot be used inside the parliament. That's number one. So and there is a thin line of difference. So he has to place his facts responsibly with data and facts, and also unite with the ruling party in such issues of national importance, wherein clearly outside institutions are trying to tarnish the image of India, and India is at a very important cusp in its history when we are going to become the third largest economy in the world. So here, I think the opposition needs to play a very constructive.
Oh yes, it is our time to rise and shine, really. Thank you, both of you, for taking out the time to speak to us on the big story. Well, on that note, we slip into a very short break. On the other side, we bring you a detailed discussion on the Local Circles report with founder Sachin Taparia. This talks about the aviation industry, and we'll get you details. So stay with us. Welcome back. Now, you're probably being scammed by airline websites and apps when you try to book tickets. That's what a survey by local circles on dark patterns finds. That means the use of manipulative tactics to mislead customers into paying a higher fare on the purchase of a flight. Himakshi Bahuguna joins in with a detailed report, and then we'll also go across to Sachin Taparia, who's been waiting very patiently. Hi, Sachin. I'm just going to be coming to you in a bit.
Have you noticed that if you check the price of a flight online more than once, the ticket price shoots up? Have you also randomly paid for travel insurance or a charity that you did not want to pay, like the box that is ticked by default to pay 1 rupee to a charitable organization, and you realize you've been tricked into paying it? Have you also felt like you absolutely must book a flight ticket within the time stipulated by the airline, or the ticket will get more expensive? Well, you're not alone, obviously. A survey done by Local Circle states that 6 in 10 flyers have confirmed what they call dark patterns on airline apps and websites. There are some fancy terms for these dark patterns. Basically, these are unethical and sometimes even illegal methods used by airlines to force you to buy that ticket. The survey found that 4 in 10 flyers have experienced basket sneaking. That's like 1 rupee that you pay for charity. They sneak it in without your knowledge. 72% of consumers surveyed that they have frequently experienced airfares being increased if they search for a flight multiple times in a session. 62% of respondents said that they have felt a false sense of urgency to get them to book faster. And they found hidden charges that were not presented upfront. More than 20,000 flyers located across 322 districts responded to this survey. Clearly, there's an urgent need for airlines to stop these deceptive practices as they're so rampant.
Well, Sachin Taparia, the founder of Local Circles, is with us. Sachin, that report of yours is going to, touch upon everybody's life, because there's rarely there'll be very few people who haven't felt all of this when they're booking these flight tickets. To begin with, one of the things that your survey talks about is that there are coercive methods, or what you refer to as dark methods, to force flyers to buy tickets. Tell us more about this. What did surveyors say?
So absolutely, Nupur, we have been getting these complaints for several years. And after, we escalated this to the Government of India, the Ministry of Consumer Affairs, last year, in November of 2023, the government basically called out 13 dark patterns, and they were called out as illegal and something that would be amounting to an unfair trade practice. And anybody who engages in these dark patterns will be penalized by the CCPA, which is supposed to be regulating the Consumer Protection Act. And these are dark patterns that are not just applicable to the airline industry, but all industries. Anywhere where there is technology at play, an online platform is being used, whether it is e-commerce or buying insurance or making a payment, or booking your flight ticket, these dark patterns become applicable. So now coming to the airline sector, this is a sector where we've been getting a lot of complaints. And they have been, ranging from anything that is what you call as hidden charges or drip pricing to all the way, fare manipulation, basically. And false urgency issues like confirmed shaming, which is, buy this insurance. If you're not going to buy this, you could have consequences. These are all dark patterns that have been recognized by the Government of India. Now, coming to, each one of them individually, drip pricing is something which is something, very, very common. When you go look for a flight ticket, you see that the fare that is being quoted to you is 4,000 rupees. But by the time you end up booking it and make your final payment, there are about 5 or 6 additional charges that are added to it. And the fare, is 6,000 and not 4,000, which is, 50% higher. And the simple thing, that is needed in here is basically, make for airlines to make full disclosure upfront that, this fare is 4,000 and it could be additional, 1,800 to 2,000 rupees and additional charges. If that disclosure is made upfront, people there is a sense of trust amongst consumers in terms of what they are buying, what they are spending, rather than, going through a 6-step process and then at the end finding out that it was actually not 4,000 but 6,000. So this is a classic case of drip pricing. It runs across the board, of course with airlines, but many other industries as well. And something that needs to be, stopped essentially as per the dark pattern legislation.
Right.
The other one that is, go ahead, please.
I just wanted to touch upon this basket sneaking. That's something that's particularly annoying to a lot of people. And it just doesn't happen in airlines. It happens everywhere. And if you're not careful, you do end up becoming victim to it.
No, absolutely. Except that in the case of airline, if they add a product or service by default to your basket, you went to buy and book a flight ticket, but if you did not pay attention and you basically see insurance service or travel insurance being added to your basket, because addition is by default, and if you're careful, you have to uncheck that box. That happens in some cases with some airlines. And I think these are practices which is a classic case of basket sneaking, or adding a meal, or adding priority check-in, a charge for that. So these are all cases of basket sneaking that should absolutely stop. And that is where we are going to escalate the findings of this report to the Ministry of Consumer Affairs, the CCPA, as well as the Ministry of Civil Aviation. So, these practices, the good practices, which is getting rid of these dark patterns, is adopted across the sector. All airlines should do it, basically. Then you have this whole issue of fare manipulation, Nupur, which, so far the government hasn't classified that as a dark pattern in the list of 13. But this is something that we've been, hearing a lot from the consumers, where when it's almost like somebody's trying to figure out how eager is the consumer to make that booking. And basis that, the fares are changed essentially. And this is airline sites as well as some of the travel sites that, consumers have alleged that these kind of practices are being used. While if you open, a different device or a different browser, you still see that the old fare is applicable. So again, another dark pattern that needs to be recognized and then, ensured by the government that no airline is using these practices.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And fare manipulation is something that essentially preys on either the urgency or the fear of losing out on a lower price, perhaps, that these aviation firms are using. Sachin, always a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you very much.
Okay, yeah.
All right, so on that note, it's goodbye from us on the big story, but do stay with us on NDTV Profit as we bring you more.